Most fans think the Clone Wars lasted about 6 years, roughly 1 year per season of the show. The real answer is 3. And once you realize how compressed that timeline actually is, arcs like Umbara, what fans call Space Nom, hit completely different. So let's talk about that number, 3. Because I don't think most people have actually sat with what it means. The Battle of Geonosis, Mace Windu taking Jango Fett's head, the clone army marching out of those Kaminoan hangars for the first time. That's 22 BBY. Order 66, the moment every clone trooper in the galaxy turns their weapon on the Jedi standing next to them, lands in 19 BBY. That's it. That's the whole war. Everything the show covers across 7 seasons and 133 episodes fits inside roughly 36 months. And the reason you probably didn't know that, the reason almost nobody processes it correctly, is that the show ran for 12 real-world years. Premiered on Cartoon Network in 2008, wrapped its final season on Disney Plus in the spring of 2020. Your brain does something completely natural and completely wrong. It maps 1 season of television onto 1 year of story time. 7 seasons, 7 years. Makes sense. Feels right. It's wrong. The canonical dates aren't ambiguous. The Star Wars Galactic Atlas pins them. The Clone Wars Character Encyclopedia confirms them. Pablo Hidalgo, the guy most fans treat as the final word on continuity, has affirmed the 22 to 19 BBY bracket at convention panels and in social media exchanges when people ask directly. Dave Filoni, the supervising director George Lucas personally chose to shepherd this era, has never disputed these dates in any public forum. 3 years. Non-negotiable. But here's the thing. The dates aren't what should shake you. The density is. Across those 133 episodes, Republic and Separatist forces clash on dozens of distinct worlds. 2 battles of Geonosis, Christophsis, the liberation of Ryloth, the campaign on Mon Cala, Umbara, Onderon, the fall of Mandalore, the defense of Kamino, Coruscant, Felucia, Kashyyyk, Utapau, Seleucami, Megiddo, Cato Nemoidia. And those are just the ones big enough to anchor multi-episode arcs or show up in the films. Canonical episode guides and battle indexes put the number of distinct major engagements above 60. Spread across 3 years, that's a catastrophic planetary-scale battle roughly every 2 to 3 weeks, and that only counts the ones significant enough to make it into the record. The actual war, grinding forward on multiple fronts simultaneously across a galaxy of thousands of inhabited systems, never pauses. No season of rest, no rotation home, no peacetime interlude. Every 2 to 3 weeks, a new planet, a new nightmare. And if you want proof of just how insane that compression gets, look at how the war ends. The Siege of Mandalore. Season 7, the final 4 episodes Filoni spent years perfecting, runs simultaneously with the events of Revenge of the Sith. Not around the same time, simultaneously. Ahsoka is dueling Maul in the throne room of Sundari, while Anakin is pledging himself to Palpatine across the galaxy. Order 66 fires while Ahsoka and Rex are still on a Republic cruiser above Mandalore. The same 24-hour window contains Ahsoka's victory over Maul, the fall of the Jedi Order, Anakin's transformation into Vader, and Rex fighting his own programming hard enough to choke out the words, "Find him, Fives," before his chip fully activates. That's not a war ending. That's a war detonating. Everything collapses at once because the fuse was always exactly this long. 3 years. To the hour. Now think about the people inside that machine. Ahsoka Tano goes from a 14-year-old Padawan meeting her master for the first time to a battle-hardened veteran who walks away from the Jedi Order entirely in roughly 2.5 years. Captain Rex, CT-7567, fights in more combat engagements across 36 months than most real-world soldiers experience across entire decades-long careers. Anakin Skywalker doesn't have years to be slowly seduced by Palpatine. He doesn't get a gradual, creeping fall. He goes from freshly knighted Jedi to Darth Vader in the length of a single military deployment rotation. The dark side doesn't creep. it sprints. And the Jedi Order, the galaxy's space pentagon, a monastic institution that spent 1,000 years playing peacekeepers and diplomats, gets conscripted overnight into commanding a military they didn't build, fighting a war they didn't start, using an army that was literally manufactured for them by a Sith Lord. By the time of Order 66, roughly 10,000 Jedi have been whittled down to a fraction of their pre-war numbers. Generals and Padawans dying on battlefields from Felucia to Seleucami, stretched across so many fronts they can't reinforce each other, can't regroup, can't pause long enough to notice the trap closing around them. 3 years isn't enough time for a religious order to become a competent military command structure. It's barely enough time for them to figure out what went wrong before the blasters turn around. That compression isn't a mistake. George Lucas was explicit about what he was building. In a 2005 interview with the Chicago Tribune during the Revenge of the Sith press tour, he said the original trilogy was really about the Vietnam War, the Empire as America, the scrappy rebels as the Viet Cong, which startled people who'd always assumed it was the other way around. The prequels grew from a different but related question he described to the Boston Globe that same year. How does a democracy turn itself into a dictatorship? He drew a direct line to post-9/11 America, told James Cameron in a widely circulated 2018 conversation that the parallels between what we did in Vietnam and what we're doing in Iraq now had directly informed the prequel narrative. Padme's line, "So this is how liberty dies, with thunderous applause," was written during the Bush administration, aimed squarely at the Patriot Act era. And Padme herself came from Naboo, the Canada of the galaxy, this peaceful, idyllic little democracy that most of the galaxy underestimates or ignores, a planet that somehow produced both a Supreme Chancellor and a Queen who died trying to save the Republic that same Chancellor was hollowing out from the inside. And possibly, if certain corners of Reddit are to be believed, a Sith Lord in a Gungan skin suit. But we're not going there today. The Clone Wars aren't just a science fiction conflict. They're the galaxy's Manhattan Project, a secret weapons program nobody elected, nobody fully understood, and nobody could control once it activated. Palpatine didn't need a long war. He needed a brutal one. 3 years of relentless, demoralizing, galaxy-wide carnage is exactly enough to make a democracy beg for a strongman. The war isn't the obstacle to the Empire. The war is the blueprint. And the army fighting it? Built on Kamino, the galaxy's Raytheon, a remote, secretive operation profiting from a conflict it helped engineer, producing human beings as military hardware on a production line. The whole thing was ordered in secret by Darth Tyrannus, Count Dooku, operating under the stolen identity of the deceased Jedi Master Sifo Dyas. In Attack of the Clones, Kaminoan Prime Minister Lama Su tells Obi-Wan that 200,000 units are ready, with 1 million more well on the way. Whether unit means one soldier or a larger formation remains one of the longest-running debates in the fandom. But what's not debated is the math underneath it. Clones can't be replaced at the rate they're dying. The accelerated aging process that halved their maturation time still meant roughly 10 years to grow a combat-ready soldier. Any clone begun after Geonosis wouldn't be battlefield-ready before the war was already over. The army the Republic started with was, in a very real sense, the army the Republic ended with, minus everyone it buried. Every clone trooper in this war is, from birth, a bullet someone already chambered. Born into a weapon designed by the enemy, fighting for a Republic that doesn't legally consider them people, serving a Jedi Order that never stops to ask whether commanding a slave army is compatible with the values they preach at Temple. 3 years. Less time than most people spend in a single job. And inside that window, a galaxy dies. Which brings us to Umbara. If the 3-year timeline is the cognitive reframe, Umbara is the emotional one. 4 episodes in Season 4, Darkness on Umbara, on October 28, 2011, The General on November 4th, Plan of Descent on November 11th, and Carnage of Krell on November 18th. Over a decade later, it's still the single most discussed, most emotionally charged stretch the entire series ever produced. Fans call it Space Nom. That's not hyperbole. It's a diagnosis. Umbara is a world that seems engineered to kill anyone who touches its surface. The atmosphere is so dense and opaque that sunlight barely reaches the ground. The whole planet exists in perpetual twilight, broken only by the glow of bioluminescent plants and predatory fauna. Everything on Umbara emits light, and none of it is welcoming. It glows the way a deep-sea anglerfish glows, lure and warning simultaneously. The native Umbarans have spent millennia adapting to terrain that swallows visibility, distorts sound, and turns every shadow into an ambush point. It is, in every functional sense, Vietnam's triple canopy rainforest translated into science fiction, the kind of environment where technological superiority evaporates and the home team always wins, where soldiers can't see their enemy, can't trust their own senses, and can't rely on the doctrines they trained for. This wasn't accidental. Lucas spent decades talking about Vietnam's DNA in Star Wars, and Dave Filoni, the showrunner Lucas personally mentored, has spoken in multiple convention panels and behind-the-scenes features about wanting the Clone Wars to honestly depict what war does to the people who fight it. The Umbara arc is that intention taken to its absolute limit. The Republic deploys two of its elite units, the 501st Legion under Anakin and the 212th Attack Battalion under Obi-Wan. But before the ground campaign begins, Anakin gets recalled to Coruscant, a decision later implied to be Palpatine's quiet maneuvering behind the scenes. Command of the 501st transfers to Jedi General Pong Krell. Krell is wrong in every way a commanding officer can be wrong. He's physically imposing, a towering basilisk with 4 arms, each pair wielding a double-bladed lightsaber. His service record precedes him, a general known for achieving objectives and for the astronomical casualty rates among the clones who serve under him. From his first scene with Rex, with Fives, with Jesse, with Hardcase, with Dogma, Krell establishes himself as the precise inverse of every Jedi commander these clones have ever trusted. He refuses to use their names. CT-7567, not Rex. CT-5555, not Fives. He strips them of the individual identities they built for themselves in defiance of their manufactured origins. And he dismisses their tactical recommendations with open contempt. Not the respectful disagreement of a commander who sees a bigger picture, but the dismissal of someone who doesn't consider them worth listening to. His first order? A frontal assault against a heavily fortified Umbaran position across open ground. No cover, no flanking support. The kind of command any experienced soldier would immediately recognize as a death sentence dressed up as strategy. The clones comply, because compliance is what they were engineered for. They comply and they die in devastating numbers, and Krell watches from the rear without flinching. This is where the Vietnam parallels lock in, and they're worth tracing with specificity because this isn't casual fan interpretation. It's the text working exactly as its creators designed. During Vietnam, one of the most corrosive phenomena within the American military was the systematic breakdown of trust between enlisted soldiers and commanding officers. By the late 1960s and early 1970s, a practice called fragging had become so widespread it generated its own grim bureaucratic vocabulary. The deliberate killing of unpopular officers by their own troops, typically with fragmentation grenades, because the blast obscured evidence of intent. The U.S. Army documented over 200 confirmed fragging incidents in 1970 alone. The Department of Defense tallied more than 900 confirmed or suspected cases between 1969 and 1972. The drivers were surgically mirrored in the Umbara arc. Officers who rotated into command with less frontline experience than the men they were ordering into danger. Tactical decisions designed to generate body counts rather than achieve strategic objectives. And a deepening conviction among rank-and-file soldiers that their lives weren't being risked, they were being spent. Pong Krell isn't the galaxy's bad general. He's the galaxy's fragging target. Because Krell isn't failing through incompetence. He's deliberately, systematically sending these men to die. The General, the second episode, makes this impossible to ignore. Krell orders another assault, a direct advance on a fortified Umbaran airbase, using the same blunt force, high-casualty approach, despite Rex's detailed protest that a flanking maneuver through the jungle would achieve the same objective at a fraction of the cost in lives. The clones take the position, because clones always take the position, but the price is enormous, and the victory tastes like ash. Rex, who leads from the front, who knows every trooper by his chosen name, who treats them as individuals whose survival matters, he's watching his command philosophy get destroyed in real time by a superior officer who treats clone lives as ammunition. Fives, the ARC trooper designated CT-5555, a man who already survived the catastrophic defense of the Rishi Moon listening station, begins openly voicing what every trooper is thinking. Krell's orders aren't just reckless, they're malicious. Jesse, CT-5597, backs him without hesitation. But Dogma, a younger, regulation-devoted trooper whose very name the show chose with deliberate irony, defends Krell. Orders exist to be followed. Questioning a Jedi general is treason. The system works if you trust the system. It's a position that sounds rational and obedient and patriotic, and it's going to destroy him. Plan of Descent, the third episode, brings the moral crisis to its breaking point. The question stops being, is our commander making bad decisions? And becomes, are we still soldiers if we disobey the worst order we've ever received? Fives, Jesse, and the irrepressible trooper Hardcase devise a plan to commandeer captured Umbaran starfighters, alien craft with unfamiliar controls that Krell has explicitly forbidden anyone from using, and fly them against the separatist supply ship reinforcing Umbaran defenses. It's exactly the kind of creative, adaptive, asymmetric tactic that Rex or Anakin would have endorsed in a heartbeat. Krell says no. They do it anyway. Hardcase can't get his starfighter's weapon system to interface with the supply ship's defenses, so he flies his craft directly into the reactor core, tells Fives and Jesse to go, and detonates the supply ship from inside it. He dies the kind of death that should make him a hero. When Fives and Jesse return to the surface, Krell charges them with treason, sentences them to death by firing squad, to be carried out by their own brothers. Let that land. This is the first time in the entire Clone Wars series that clone troopers are ordered to execute their own. Not in the heat of combat, not in the chaos of an ambush. A formal, deliberate, cold-blooded military execution. This is My Lai logic, the institutional machinery grinding forward, producing atrocity not from chaos, but from compliance. Rex doesn't countermand the order. He just makes sure he's there. Makes the firing squad look at the men they're about to kill. The squad raises their blasters. Fives and Jesse stand against the wall. Every trooper in the firing line refuses to shoot. They lower their weapons. They choose their brothers over their orders. And the echo of Vietnam is deafening. That moment where soldiers' loyalty to the men beside them supersedes their loyalty to the chain of command, where the question of what constitutes a lawful order stops being theoretical and becomes the difference between living with yourself and not. But the arc's true nadir, the scene that earns the Space Nom nickname in full, arrives through the oldest weapon in war's entire arsenal, friendly fire. Krell contacts Rex, tells him Umbaran insurgents have stolen clone trooper armor and are advancing on the 501st's position from the direction of the 212th's lines. Simultaneously, he tells the 212th the identical lie in reverse. The two clone units, brothers who fought side by side across dozens of campaigns, move toward each other through the bioluminescent dark of the Umbaran jungle. They can't see clearly, can't identify faces beneath helmets. And a Jedi general, a commander they've been conditioned from birth to trust absolutely, has told them the enemy is coming. They open fire. Clones kill clones. Brothers murder brothers. The disorientation is total. The anguish is instantaneous once the first helmet gets knocked off and Rex sees a clone face staring back at him from behind a scope. The ceasefire comes desperate, screaming, far too late. The dead cannot be uncounted. And here's what makes it not just horrifying, but structurally devastating. These clones all share the same face. They're all Jango Fett. When Rex sees that trooper behind the scope, he's not just seeing a fellow soldier, he's seeing himself. The friendly fire isn't an abstraction. It's fratricide in the most literal sense the word has ever carried. Every body on that field is a mirror. Krell's endgame, when it finally surfaces, is almost worse than the atrocity itself. He wasn't incompetent. He wasn't confused. He'd foreseen the fall of the Republic, foreseen Order 66, foreseen the Jedi's annihilation, and decided to audition for the winning side. He was trying to become Count Dooku's new apprentice. Every clone he fed into the meat grinder was a demonstration of his willingness to break with the Jedi, a resume written in body bags. The Jedi Council's war was his interview process. And the final moment belongs to Dogma, the trooper whose name was chosen with brutal irony, the one who defended Krell at every turn, who believed orders existed to be followed and the system worked if you trusted it. Dogma picks up a blaster and executes Krell himself. The most obedient soldier in the 501st becomes the one who pulls the trigger on blind institutional faith. It doesn't save him. It breaks him. But he does it. Rex, standing over the aftermath, doesn't deliver a victory speech. He just looks exhausted, hollowed out. The galaxy's grunt sergeant, a man fighting a war he didn't start, for a republic that doesn't see him as a person, under commanders who view his men as ammunition. Sound familiar to anyone who's read a Vietnam memoir? Or listened to a podcast interview with a veteran of Fallujah? And here's the part that turns Umbara from a great arc into a prophecy. Fives survives. He walks off Umbara carrying the lesson that the system will sacrifice you without blinking. And 2 seasons later, in Season 6, the unknown, conspiracy, fugitive, orders, that lesson saves his life just long enough to uncover the single darkest secret in the entire war. Clone Trooper Tup, a member of the 501st, suffers a malfunction during battle. His behavior changes. He walks up to Jedi General Tiplar in the middle of a firefight and shoots her point blank. No reason, no provocation, just a trigger going off early. The Kaminoans want to call it a mental breakdown. Case closed. Ship the body back for examination. But Fives, the same Fives who watched Krell send his brothers into a meat grinder, who stood against a wall waiting for a firing squad, who learned on Umbara that obedience can be a death sentence. Fives doesn't accept the official story. He pushes. With the help of a medical droid designated AZI-3, he discovers what's buried inside every clone trooper's brain, an organic inhibitor chip, biological compliance hardware, a kill switch baked into the architecture of every single soldier the Republic has ever fielded. The Kaminoans claim the chips suppress aggression, keep the clones docile and obedient. The truth is worse. The chips are Order 66, preloaded, waiting for a signal, ready to override every bond, every friendship, every memory of fighting beside a Jedi who trusted you. Tup's chip malfunctioned and fired early. That's all. The galaxy's entire clone army is walking around with a biological NDA in their skulls, a classified directive they can't remember agreeing to, can't resist when it activates, and can't survive disobeying. Fives figures this out. He actually figures it out. He tries to warn Anakin. He tries to warn Rex. And Nala Se, the Kaminoan chief scientist, Kamino's Raytheon middle management doing whatever it takes to protect the contract, drugs him, discredits him, makes him look unstable. When Fives finally gets Rex and Anakin alone, he's frantic, desperate, barely coherent. He sounds like a conspiracy theorist. He sounds exactly like what they've been told he is. Commander Fox shoots him before he can finish explaining. Fives dies on the floor, in Rex's arms, mumbling about a conspiracy that encompasses the entire war. Rex holds him and doesn't understand. Not yet. He won't understand until Order 66 fires, and his own chip activates on a cruiser above Mandalore. And in the last seconds of free will he has left, The only words he can force out are, "Find him, Fives." The dead trooper's name. The warning he didn't listen to when it mattered. Fives is the galaxy's whistleblower. The intelligence analyst who finds the classified program, tries to go public, and gets silenced by the very system he's trying to save. He's Daniel Ellsberg if the Pentagon Papers had been shredded before the New York Times could print them. He had the truth. Nobody listened, and the machine kept running. Now remember the timeline. 3 years. That's how long this whole war lasts. The clones don't get to process Umbara. They don't get counseling or rotation home or a congressional hearing. They get their next deployment orders. And the next. And the next. Until Order 66 fires, and the men who survived all of it become the instruments of the final betrayal they were literally built for. The betrayal that was inside their heads the entire time, ticking. So what happened next? We go to Mortis. And here's where things get genuinely tragic. Not war tragic, but fate tragic. The kind of cosmic cruelty that makes you wonder whether the Force is a religion or a rigged game. Season 3, Episodes 15 through 17. Overlords. Altar of Mortis. Ghosts of Mortis. These episodes aired before the Umbara arc chronologically in the show's run, but in terms of thematic weight, they belong at the end of this conversation. Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka find themselves drawn to a mysterious realm called Mortis, a place that exists outside normal space and time, inhabited by 3 beings who embody the Force itself: the Father, the Son, and the Daughter. The Father maintains balance between the Son's dark side and the Daughter's light. It's the Force made literal, made family, made dysfunctional. Here's what most people remember about this arc. The Son shows Anakin a vision of his future. All of it. Mustafar, the suit, the mechanical breathing, the younglings, Vader. Anakin sees everything he's going to become, and the horror of it briefly turns him to the dark side. He allies with the Son, believing he can use this knowledge to prevent the future rather than fulfill it. Dramatic, devastating, unforgettable. And here's what most people get wrong about what happens next. A pervasive misconception, spread by one of the most popular Clone Wars videos on YouTube, a video that 6 separate commenters had to correct in its own comment section, claims Anakin left Mortis carrying that knowledge, that he walked back into the war knowing he would become Vader and spent the rest of the conflict trying to prevent it. That's not what happened. The Father intervenes. In the final moments of Ghosts of Mortis, before sacrificing himself to stop the Son, the Father reaches out and touches Anakin's forehead, and he erases everything, every vision, every memory of what the Son revealed. The scene is quiet, almost gentle. There's no dramatic score, no close-up on Anakin's horrified face, because Anakin isn't horrified. He doesn't know there's anything to be horrified about. One moment he has the most important information in the galaxy. The next, it's gone. And when Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka wake up back in their ship, none of them can clearly recall what happened on Mortis. The whole experience dissolves like a dream. The canonical text is unambiguous. Anakin walks back into a war that's going to eat him alive, completely blind to the ending. Think about what that means for the entire prequel saga. This wasn't Anakin choosing to ignore a warning. Wasn't him being too arrogant to listen. It wasn't even the Jedi Council failing him, though they did that plenty. The Force itself, through its living embodiment, made the deliberate decision to keep Anakin Skywalker ignorant of his own fate. The one person who could have changed everything had the answer in his hands, and it was taken from him. Not by an enemy, not by a Sith Lord, by the cosmic system he devoted his life to serving. Dave Filoni has spoken about the Mortis arc as fundamental to understanding Anakin's tragedy. The idea that the Force has a will, and that will doesn't always align with what's merciful or kind. The Father didn't erase Anakin's memories out of cruelty. He did it to preserve balance, which, depending on how you look at it, is either noble or monstrous. Because preserving balance meant ensuring that Anakin would fall, that the Jedi would be purged, that the Empire would rise, that millions would die under Vader's shadow. Also, the Force could eventually, decades later, course correct through Luke. And that pattern, the pattern of people who get close to the truth and lose it, runs through the entire war like a scar. Fives discovered the inhibitor chips and died before anyone believed him. Anakin saw his future as Vader and had the memory ripped from his mind. The same galaxy, the same 3 years, the same machine grinding forward, eliminating every person who stumbles onto the exit before they can reach it. The popular version of the Mortis story, Anakin knew and fell anyway, is a tragedy about hubris, a man who saw the cliff and walked off it. And the real version is worse, because the real version is a tragedy about helplessness, a man who never saw the cliff at all, who was blindfolded by the very thing he trusted most, pointed toward the edge, and given a gentle push. He didn't fail to heed the warning. The warning was stolen from him. Every misconception you carry about the Clone Wars, the timeline, the battles, the memories, has a darker truth underneath it. The war was shorter than you thought. The horror was worse than you remember. And the one chance to change everything was erased before it could matter. You just didn't know it until now. If this changed how you see the Clone Wars, subscribe. More stories like this are coming.